Thank you. Please be seated. Officer Colgate, I will remind you that you are still under oath, and Mr. Pralia, you can go ahead and resume.
All right. Sir, we're to Apple, and I just want to ask, I guess, one time, what's the difference of actually downloading from an iPhone versus an iCloud account?
An iPhone is a physical phone that you extract data from. An iCloud account is oftentimes that same phone's backup to an offline server somewhere, and we pull the data off of that server instead of from the phone.
Okay. Let me start with 191. If I could approach.
Yes, go ahead.
Sir, do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And is that Ms. Varela's iCloud Cellbrite return that was provided to you in this case?
Yes, it is.
And have you reviewed it in anticipation of your testimony?
Yes, I have.
Any concerns about the validity or authenticity?
No, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, I move for the admission of 191.
Any objection to 191?
No.
All right, the court will admit into evidence 191.
And sir, then when you go through that, do you actually provide that in a Cellbrite analysis like you've described?
Yes, I do.
And contained in that, would there be separate categories for items?
Yes, several different categories.
Can you give a few of those?
Text messages, pictures, photos, location data. There's a lot of different things contained within one of those reports.
Okay. If I could approach with what's been marked as People's Exhibit 205 and 208.
All right.
Do you recognize those, sir?
Yes, I do.
And were those directly taken from what would have been on 191?
Yes.
And in going through that, were you able to verify that based on the type of files and the names and the locations?
Yes.
Okay. Are those fair and accurate as to 205 and 208?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I move for the admission of 205 and 208.
And from the defense, you maintain your previous objection?
Yes, we do.
All right, noting that objection, I will accept into evidence states 205 and 208.
All right, sir, can you briefly describe to the jury before we publish these what metadata would be?
Metadata is essentially just data about an image that's contained within the image.
Okay. If we could start with 205, was this a message that caught your attention when you were reviewing this?
Yes.
And fair to say that it's from Stacy Rodriguez, or at least listed on the top?
Yes. This is a picture of a message. Yes.
Okay. And can you briefly read that for us?
The blue bubble appears to be from the owner of the device or of the cloud account.
And in this case, to be clear, that would be Hosanna Varela.
That is correct. The messages on the left in the gray bubbles appear to be from someone identified as Stacy Rodriguez at the top of the chat. So in my head, you're not taking the ring off, mean you FWM. So yeah, you're not single, no mo. I come with a lot of things: attention, love, tickles, support. I'll kill a MF for you, like 6 feet under.
Okay. Now, if we could show 208. Do we have that same message that would have been on 205 on the left and then also on the right?
Yes.
And then can you describe what we're looking at below that?
Below that is the metadata that Cellbrite puts together of that particular, what I would call digital artifact, which is an image. The top is the image name. It says name, and then type is image. It says how big it is in bytes. The path there is the path that it came from the, looks like it's from the Cloud Photo Library, which is how Apple iCloud structures where they put the images that you back up to their server. The created and access dates show January 4th of 2022, which is the time that digital artifact was created. This is a little complicated, if you mind if I explain.
Yes, if you could please explain.
they're a little misleading in that sometimes people think that if it shows a created date of January 4th, that's when the image was taken. That simply just means when I pulled that image off of the Apple servers and put it onto a forensic computer, that image was created on my computer on January 4th, which would line up with what I was doing because on January 4th, that's when I was processing this. So created and accessed means I put it onto my machine and I accessed it or viewed it. Both of those show January 4th of 2022. The modified date is when that image was last originally modified. Oftentimes that means either saved onto the original device, etc. It could mean a lot of different things, but it shows a modified date of November 2nd of 2021.
So to be clear, based on all of your testimony, your experience, and your expertise, is it fair to say that you believe this message dealing with Stacy Rodriguez says, "I'll kill an MF for you like 6 feet under" on November 2nd, 2021?
Yes, I believe the screenshot was taken on November 2nd of 2021 of this message.
Okay. If we could take that down. I'm also going to approach with what's been marked as People's Exhibit 212. It's 3 pages previously shown to defense.
All right.
Do you mind, sir, if I note one other thing about that image?
Please do.
The screenshot itself shows a date at the top of 8/08 and the modified date of 7/08 based on U2C time. It could be very accurate. That, in my opinion, I would say it's likely that this image screenshot was taken shortly around the same time that message was received.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. Now going to 212, you had talked there were different categories. We just dealt with some messages or photos. Are you familiar with the Apple ecosystem having notes?
Yes, sir.
And generally, can you describe that?
Notes is just an application that comes with every iPhone, and you can type notes into it.
Okay. And can you describe the general process that you go through when a search warrant is authorized with a specific date range to then pull this material and verify that you're operating within the lines?
Yes, sir. When I received I'll put it this way. Bear with me, it's a little complex. Apple allows for the service of a warrant to their systems, and with an authorization, they will pull off of their servers and allow us to access that. Apple will send basically a password-protected file and a password to decrypt it to us. Once we do that, we establish a connection with Apple and pull all the data off of their servers that they think falls within the date range that we are allowed to have. Apple will say with their return, we can't verify for sure that everything we're giving you falls within that date range. They don't want to be liable for giving us something we're not allowed to have. So oftentimes it comes to us to make sure that what we're getting falls within the date range we're allowed to have. If I can continue, what I then do is I run everything through the same software, Celebrite. Celebrite has the ability to look at any items that have date stamps and say, well, if it's a date stamp that falls within the time we're allowed to have, we can keep it and move it forward. If not, we push it aside. Not every digital item from these have a date stamp. Some of them are ambiguous. We don't know where they come from, but they could be included. In this particular case, I evaluated and looked at things that did not have date stamps to determine if I could find a way to guarantee or to at least presume that those fell within the dates we were allowed to have.
And what did you do then for that?
In this particular case, I saw several notes files, and none of the notes files had an actual metadata of a created date. So, but I did find that 5 of the notes files within this were manually dated by presumably the owner of the device, Hosanna Varela, with a typed out date. And the 5 that fell within the date range we were allowed to have, I included in my Celebrite report moving forward. The remaining 16 notes I pushed aside and didn't put them in as evidence.
Okay. And contained within that, is it fair to say, without dealing with the context or the actual content, fair to say that it was treated like long notes, almost like a diary.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any concerns at all then, other than what you've discussed about the authenticity of those notes
No, I do not.
and how they were captured?
I have no concerns.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd move to admit 212.
All right. And any further record from the defense apart from what you've already made?
No, we're asking not to publish at this time.
All right. I am going to conditionally admit 212, subject to further testimony from other witnesses.
All right. If I could also approach with 206. Sir, I'm handing you a thumb drive. Do you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
Have you actually looked at it prior to today's court?
Yes, I have.
Can you verify that that is fair and accurate?
Yes, it is.
Is that specifically the Cellbrite report that you constructed from the physical cell phone of Ms. Hosanna Varela?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, move for the admission of 206.
Any objection to 206?
No objection.
All right. The court will admit into evidence 206.
Sir, as you went through that process in dealing with the Cellbrite report, and you're trying to generate that from a physical device, these are not records sent by Apple. Can you describe, can you always get into a phone, or at times are you stopped?
Oftentimes I am stopped. I can't always get into a phone.
Okay. For example, in this case, were you asked to download Ms. Rodriguez's phone?
Yes, I was.
And were you able to do that?
No, I was not.
Okay. And as it pertains to then Ms. Varela's, ultimately, were you able to get into that?
I was ultimately able to get into it, yes.
And what was required at that time?
A passcode, a 6-digit passcode.
Can you tell the jury what that 6-digit passcode was?
It was 100321.
So 100321
Yes, sir.
or 1032021, one of those two?
100321.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any cross-examination, please? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. All right, Officer Colgate. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to start. You talked about the notes that you saw on Ms. Varela's phone,
Yes, ma'am.
and Mr. Perelia had asked you if this was kind of written as if it was a diary, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You have no idea the intent behind those notes, right?
I don't know.
You don't know necessarily the situation in which they were written,
No, I do not.
the context in which they were written.
No, ma'am.
Okay. And you can kind of get an idea sometimes of when things were created or modified on Celebrate, right?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay, but not all the time.
Not all the time.
And you had said there were some notes where the date was written out, correct?
That is correct.
And when we're talking about a date written out, it was contrary to the modified or created date. Is that fair to say?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, could we publish 208, please?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so if we're looking over here on the far right, it says created and modified, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So when we're talking about a date written out, that's not the same as the created and modified, right?
It could be. I don't know. I don't. Do you have an example?
I have a better way to ask this question.
Yes, ma'am.
So if we have the created and modified, we see those dates there, right?
Yes, ma'am.
When you were referencing messages where the dates were written out, that was not saying that it was what you saw in the created and modified, correct?
The dates that were written out was not something I got from the metadata of the item. The metadata did not have dates included.
Okay. When you saw it written out, it was in the body of whatever you were looking at.
That is correct.
Okay. So whether it be a note or some kind of other thing that you were able to pull from the phone.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in that regard, it is as if somebody had written out the date rather than the metadata from the phone grabbing that date.
That is correct.
Okay. I would like to, we can keep on this one. We'll start with I'll Kill an MF for You.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you aware of a song by Skylar Grey featuring Eminem called Kill for You?
No, I am not.
Okay. Looking, the second I guess the last one here, like 6 Feet Under. Are you aware of a song by Billie Eilish called 6 Feet Under?
No, I am not.
Are you aware of a song by Hardy called 6 Feet Under?
No, ma'am.
What about a song by Lola Young called 6 Feet Under?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Any redirect examination for Officer Colgate?
To be clear on 212, the metadata did not conflict with the date written on there either.
Correct.
As to 208, if we could put that back up. You were asked a lot about a variety of different songs,
Yes, sir.
okay? Was there any part of that discussion that was talking about music where maybe we cut off the top part that they said, here are my favorite songs that I want to go over?
Objection, hearsay.
All right, I'll overrule the objection given the questioning by the defense.
No, sir, I don't see anything about songs, just in looking at it in general.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sir, you can leave the witness then. Thank you, sir.